The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Brudzinski. This is the episode for June 1, 2017. Ralph Tomaselli again has the night off. But here with me is co-hosting the Citizen Mike Show is Matt Zabrook, the Wallingford reporter for the Record Journal. And Matt, you know, truth be told, you're better than Ralph anyway because you reported all these stories. You know the facts cold, and so glad to have you. And I'll make peace with Ralph after the show for that comment. But there's four things that I want to get time to cover. And for me, maybe the most interesting one is an issue that some of the teachers at Sheehan High School have with the school superintendent, and there were some, I guess, some petitions or letters, some complaints by the teachers as a result of a meeting that a subcommittee of the Board of Ed had on April 3. And this, I guess there was some, I read, just my inference, some frustrations were building as a result of this April 3 meeting, and it sort of burst into the surface. Let me read the sentence you wrote to lead the article, and then help us from there. You wrote on May 23, a group of Sheehan High School teachers met with the school superintendent earlier this month to express concerns about a discussion between Board of Education members and parents that took place at a school board meeting in April. Some Sheehan faculty believe the discussion slandered and targeted educators at the school and was orchestrated by school superintendent Salvatore Menzo. Matt, pick it up from that point. Give us sort of the bigger picture as to what was in the story and what's behind it.
Right, so I want to be careful about how I talk about this.
Of course.
Some of the things aren't clear, and, you know, some of the claims being made on both sides still unclear to me, but yeah, like you said and like I wrote, you know, teachers met with the superintendent, I believe the Board of Education chair, and teacher union officials were there as well, and I think a couple other central office administrators. It stemmed from a April 3rd Board of Ed meeting. I think 3 parents spoke at the meeting about various complaints, essentially saying teachers weren't following various policies. I guess there's teachers, you know, that I've talked to who didn't want to speak publicly for the story, but who I talked to, you know, think that the discussion targeted the school's faculty.
Now, why? Let me interrupt you. Why, or what grounds did they have to believe that from their perspective? What did they point to as the basis for those feelings?
Right. So, just their words, not mine.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't on the agenda. This discussion wasn't on the agenda. I believe the agenda for this meeting had 3 items on it. I think they were all related to new textbooks. So it's one of those meetings that you expect it to go 20 minutes, you're in, you're out. And it ended up being an hour-and-a-half long meeting, this discussion between the parents and the board and school officials lasted about an hour. And I think before the person chairing the meeting was set to adjourn, the superintendent stopped her from adjourning not once but twice, I believe, to allow the parents to speak. The superintendent has told me that he just wanted to give the parents an opportunity to speak. I guess that's just the culture that they try to build. The board tries to build. You know, if parents have an issue They have a right to speak at a meeting. I mean, it's a public meeting. Anyone can show up and speak, especially, the parent of a student. So.
Yeah, so a quote from your article,
Yep.
This is Dr. Menzo saying, I know, and this, I guess, is taken from either the video of the meeting or notes that were, it had to be from the video, I guess.
Yep.
I know we have some guests in the audience, he said, who might want to make some comments. So I didn't want you to go to adjournment just yet, Menzo said.
Yep.
Some teachers believe this indicated Menzo encouraged parents to criticize Sheehan faculty according to the document obtained by the Record Journal. What document are we referring to? What secret document did you get?
Secret document.
Yeah, secret document.
Right, so teachers didn't want to speak on the record, I think for reasons a lot of people can understand, but the Record Journal obtained a document that essentially outlined teachers' concerns and grievances based on feedback from a group of teachers, and this document was prepared in advance of the meeting with the board and school officials, to lay out the things that they found wrong with the meeting.
So, as I understand what's going on, after this April 3 meeting,
Yep.
some of the teachers let their feelings be known that, and this is my synopsis, that they were betrayed or thrown under the bus by the Board of Ed and maybe the superintendent because of what was said at the meeting. So they wanted a meeting with the superintendent. I guess they got the meeting with the superintendent, and that's kind of what you were referring, or that's what the headline says, teachers air grievances during meeting with Menzo.
Yep.
And how does the story end insofar as your reporting goes? Everyone kissed and made up, it's air of good feeling, a kumbaya moment, everyone's on the same page, yeah? No. Yeah?
No.
Tell us.
I guess it's one of these situations where it depends on who you talk to. The quotes I included in my story from the superintendent, I think, it could be summed up to saying that, we're going to try to work this out going forward. It's an opportunity for us to grow and reflect, that sort of thing. And I think a quote from the union president indicated something along those lines, that we hope things will be handled better going forward. Some of the teachers I talked to, that sentiment wasn't reflected. I think I quoted a teacher in the story saying that there's, mistrust. Some teachers still believe that parents were encouraged to, speak about the teachers. And it's important to note, too, and I wrote in the story, that no Sheehan teachers were specifically named by parents, which some Sheehan teachers believed kind of generalized the complaints being made to all teachers in the school. So
I want to back up and
Yep.
and just draw some reasonable inferences. Well, it's not a reasonable inference. I watched the video of the meeting.
Yep.
I went online. I got a copy and printed out some of the board policies. I read your column, and I've had some private conversations of my own, off-the-record conversations of my own. So I'm coming to this issue with that,
Yep.
with that sort of background. So. Part of the discussion, or dominant part of the discussion at this April 3 meeting was one or more parents complaining about the special education services that their child got,
Right.
and going on at length about her concerns and her worries, and it was a sharp criticism, in my view, I don't think there's any other way to interpret it, of the Sheehan administration, one or more of the Sheehan teachers, and especially the special ed function. A sharp criticism. Again, drawing inferences from your article and based on what I understand from my own scratching around, the teachers did not know this was going to happen, so they didn't have anyone there if they chose to rebut this. But it seemed as though some parents were laying out some allegations, and they were asking their allegations to be taken at face value, yet to be sure, there's probably another side of the story,
Yep.
which was never told at April 3, on April 3. So I can see where the teachers feel betrayed and blindsided and thrown under the bus. Some people take a public stand, a sharp public stand against the function at Sheehan High. No one is there to defend the function at Sheehan High. The parent is allowed to go on and on. The Board of Ed seems to be absorbing this and taking it in at face value. It seems like the whole episode was facilitated by Dr. Menzo, because even though he knew this was going to happen, he prevented the meeting from being adjourned, and just the mere fact that the meeting was almost to be adjourned, suggests that Menzo opened the door affirmatively to, this hour-long discussion on an item that wasn't on the agenda. Did I stray far from the facts with that quick, rapid-fire summary?
No, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I don't want to agree with your opinion.
No,
it's not my place to have an opinion,
sure.
but yeah,
the factual basis really here.
Right. Yeah, I think the crux of the teachers' complaints are, they weren't given a chance to give their own testimony at the meeting. It's not clear to me if the administration at Sheehan knew or the teachers knew before the meeting. And another complaint teachers mentioned, as like you said, I don't think the things that the parents were saying about teachers, I don't think they were ever questioned by any of the board members or any of the weren't challenged. You know, and teachers, I guess, would prefer that school officials said, I understand your complaints, we're going to look into this. And I guess that's part of why they were feeling less than supported at the meeting. Yeah.
So here's my synopsis.
Okay.
Stripped bare of the obligatory, quotes that you have. I just wanted to get the bare bones. What happened? So I want you to bear with me here, and this is how I see it. One or more parents, and I rarely put these thoughts down on paper for the purpose of the show. I generally try to keep them in my head, but I didn't want to forget anything in the order of these. I'm going to call them findings, are sort of important to my logic, and I kind of have a dim view of what happened. So I wanted to get this in a logical way, relying on notes. So one or more parents had a complaint about how their children were receiving special education service at Sheehan High School. And one or more of the parents contacted the superintendent about these complaints before the April 3 meeting, and advised him that they wanted to speak to the issue. And obviously the superintendent knew that, because he called in the director of special ed, and he was ready not to adjourn the meeting. So certainly the superintendent knew about this. The superintendent of schools also advised the chairlady of the Board of Ed, Roxanne McKay, that this was going to happen, and he obviously advised the director of special ed. But it seems as though the teachers, he did not advise the teachers, neither did Roxanne McKay. Based on what I saw and read in my conversations, they were unaware this was going to happen, hence their feeling of being blindsided and thrown under the bus. If there is another side to that, oh yes, the teachers were invited to come and present their side of the story, that has not surfaced anywhere. That claim hasn't surfaced anywhere, but I'd be interested to know if anyone is saying that.
Of course.
So it looks like no one advised the teachers, who were the objects of the complaints. And it looks like that Superintendent Sal Menzo advised Roxanne McKay and Roxanne McKay only that this was going to happen. There was a quote by Pat Reynolds, a Democratic member of the Board of Education, in your column that suggests that he didn't know this was coming, and he wished that he could prepare, look into it beforehand.
Right.
And so it looks like only the superintendent and the chairlady of the Board of Ed knew, along with the superintendent. And, of course, the issue was not listed on the agenda. And the agenda for the meeting is extremely important because it advises the public, meaning the teachers, the administrators, anyone who might be a stakeholder, that this is going to be discussed. It also it tips off the record journal. So if you see an agenda and there's something juicy in there, you can make plans to go. And it's also a requirement of the Freedom of Information Act that you don't discuss stuff that isn't on the agenda for all those reasons. In addition, and in a minute I'm going to take a drink of water and pass it over to you, the board has two policies that are pertinent to this issue. And one policy says, and we have them here on the table, if the precise wording is critical, we'll pull it out. But if a parent or a student has a complaint about personnel, they're supposed to escalate their complaints up what's called a chain of authority from the lowest level to the highest level, starting with the teacher up through the administrators. And if they can't get any resolution through that level, they then take it to the superintendent, and the superintendent is duty-bound, in my view, to resolve this. And if it can't be resolved at the superintendent level, then the parents or students go to the Board of Ed. If a complaint goes directly to a Board of Ed member, for example, if a parent should call up Roxanne McKay and say, I have a problem with what's going on at Sheehan, she is duty-bound under this policy not to hold a public meeting on it, but to refer it to the superintendent for investigation and action. That's the bare bones, and I got some conclusions after that. But let me take a drink of water and turn it over to you for any additions, deletions, modifications, nuances, or anything else.
It's not clear to me whether all three parents followed this chain of commands before speaking at the meeting. I think I talked to the chairwoman for this story, and I don't think it was clear to her either. And the other thing I just wanted to point out from what you said is it's not clear to me what the superintendent did to address the issue before the meeting. If he met with Sheehan faculty to address this issue or not, it's not clear to me. And
that wasn't ferreted out by any board member at the April 3 meeting?
Not that I can remember from watching the video.
Yeah. So, my conclusions, because I wrote them down, I gave this some thought. My conclusions are as follows. The Board of Ed and the superintendent, in my view, violated the Freedom of Information Act. They violated the Freedom of Information Act by allowing a matter of length. It wasn't, an inadvertent, quick, something starts before he can stop it. This was something that the superintendent knew of in advance. He knew this was going to happen. The chair lady of the Board of Ed, Roxanne McKay, knew this was going to happen, yet it wasn't on the agenda. Freedom of Information Act is pretty clear. Not pretty clear. It's clear in this regard. And so the way things unfolded, Roxanne McKay, who is overall, in charge of this, and the superintendent violated the Freedom of Information Act. I also believe that the superintendent violated the written policy of the Board of Education by facilitating an end run around the chain of authority that is set out in a board policy. He facilitated an open and public discussion pertaining to complaints about personnel without insisting that it go through all the levels up through and including himself. And he should have taken ownership of this issue if it was festering with the parents, and he should have dealt with it himself before facilitating an hour-long open discussion directly to the Board of Ed. That's a Board of Ed policy that he himself did not follow, and the same would go with respect to Roxanne McKay. If a complaint came to her directly by email or from a parent, she was duty-bound by the policy not to have it aired in front of the Board of Education. That's directly against the black letter of the policy. She was to refer that to the Board of Ed superintendent, I meant to say, for investigation and resolution. And if it couldn't be resolved by the superintendent, then it becomes a Board of Ed matter for general discussion and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
The superintendent apparently left this issue festering after about a year and a half, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, what I mean by a year and a half. He left this issue festering. Apparently, the parents have said at that April 3 meeting, this is a problem of long standing, that there's a lot of documentation. They made complaints. They were frustrated, yet the problem was unresolved, and it was a superintendent's duty, before it got to the Board of Ed, to use every reasonable effort to resolve a problem if it exists. Yet he did not do that. So if the parents had some sort of a grievance or a complaint, it should have been lodged against the superintendent of schools for not resolving this before an end run around him. So what we had now, the net result was what could be cast as a public shaming of some of the teachers, and of course the teachers would be upset, and a public shaming of the school administration at this April 3 meeting, and of course they should be upset. And they should be upset at the substance of it, and they should be upset about the process. You know, I watched the video, and it did seem like it was not quite a kangaroo court, but almost, and a lynch mob was forming. It just, if you're a teacher, you could see, you could reasonably take that position. Just watching the video, you could get more upset and more upset as the hour wore on and on and on, and no one sought to put the brakes on it in accordance with 2 policies of the Board of Ed. Your thoughts before we move on to a new topic. How long did that speech take? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? Cut me off. There should
Your
be a,
speech?
There should be a cloture rule to stop.
Still working on cutting you off.
Take a breath. I saw you wanted to. But
I'm interested about the freedom of information
Yeah.
aspect of what you said. Have you cleared that with the violation? Because I hear people, members of the public, talk at meetings sometimes without an agenda item. Sometimes what a council or a commission will do is they'll schedule a public comment session.
Exactly.
And there wasn't that on the agenda from what I saw.
Yeah, there wasn't that on the agenda, but there is a line between public comment where there's sort of an open mic.
Yep.
And where the public agency takes up a full discussion
Right.
of it and invites the full discussion. So when a public agency knows in advance that this is coming up and they facilitate it and they engage in feedback,
Yep.
they've crossed the line between open mic, come up and say briefly your problem, briefly your grievance or your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It crosses the line when the public agency actually has an interchange, has a conversation about it.
Right.
And especially when you know in advance that this is going to happen.
Right.
Well, good question. We ready to move on? We don't have to.
I think so.
I like this topic.
I think one thing I've just been thinking about
sure.
Since the story came out is, I got some feedback and some criticism about the story about, why didn't you look into, the validity of the parents' claims more.
Okay.
The parents claim that different federally mandated accommodations weren't being given to their children. The teachers denied what the parents said. And I just wanted to explain that, I think we agree on this, that the story here isn't, the parents' claims here, because, issues arise between teachers and parents all the time. It just doesn't make it to a public meeting. That wasn't really the news here. The news and the reason we covered this was the, management's labor dispute that they met to talk about. I believe the superintendent publicly apologized at the board's next meeting after this April 3rd meeting, saying he didn't want to paint every teacher at Sheehan with one brushstroke, I think was his quote. So, I mean, it's something he's publicly kind of acknowledged should have gone differently and met with teachers about. So that was really the story here, not so much, the specific claims and concerns from the parents.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Not to belittle any parents' claims, but
Right.
just
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there is something to what one of the parents was saying, and this parent actually posted something on social media
Yep.
about I guess a review or a study, I guess you might call it, that was done at Sheehan High School at the end of 2015. And this was a study done by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges Commission on Public Schools.
Yep.
And I guess it's a sort of a voluntary thing where officials from one town or a combination of towns go to the various school systems and try to have an objective set of fresh eyes on how the school system is doing, and then they write a report for the benefit of the school system being reviewed. So there can be improvement without sort of the force of government coming down.
Yep.
And this happened at Sheehan at the end of 2015, and one of the parents kept referring to this, and I didn't quite know what that parent was referring to until I looked at this report. And among other things contained in the report, I think this parent was referring to this. There's a full paragraph here. I'm going to try to pick out the 2 or 3 sentences that get to the nub of it. Again, going back to 2015, so this is about a year and a half old now. During classroom visits by this core of out-of-town visitors to review and assess. During classroom visits, teacher interviews, and in leadership meetings, there seemed to be a disconnection about the role of the special education teacher in the classroom setting, and their involvement in modifying curriculum and assessments and differing instruction for special education students. Classroom teachers, I'm skipping here, classroom teachers express frustration about the lack of involvement of special education staff during classes in which they are present to support special ed students. Some special education educators were seen as resistant to get involved in modifying curriculum and assessments for identified students as a result of the disconnect. We're seeing that word again, that was brought up by this parent. So there's something to what this parent said.
Right.
I didn't want to minimize, the merit of the complaint.
Yep.
As a result of the disconnect between regular and special education teachers, the school is struggling to deliver services in core classes in a collaborative manner. This is page 93 of 117, so this is not a general characterization of Sheehan School. It's 2 or 3 sentences out of a much bulkier report.
Yep.
But I think this is what the parent was referring to, and my point is, if this was the case in 2015, if this is the case now, why hasn't the superintendent made sure that the problem was addressed instead of coming to an open board meeting and sort of airing it publicly without holding the superintendent to account for something he knew was a problem for a year and a half? Just my thought.
Yeah, and again, I'll just reiterate that we don't exactly know, because I didn't ask him, and I don't know conversations you've had, but I don't know what he did behind the scenes to address that report and other issues brought up by parents. So
Let's move on.
okay.
Yeah, school cafeteria.
Yep.
Something we've been following for a long time. Since we discussed it last, the school board voted to outsource the food service function.
Well, they voted to authorize the superintendent and central office to enter negotiations with an outside company.
Yeah, I construe that as authorizing outsourcing.
Okay.
And Sodexo was the vendor of food services that was picked, and that is being recommended. And Sodexo will be the company based on that 5-2 vote back on May 22nd, subject to the State Board of Education sort of upsetting that, which I don't think is going to happen. So this is how, it's a competitor of yours. Luther Turmel of the New Haven Register. I just threw that in to get under your skin. This is how Luther Turmel, the New Haven Register, reported it. Wallingford school system looks for state to sign off on Sodexo deal. Food service giant Sodexo has submitted the top scoring proposal to take over the town's school cafeterias next fall. Officials with the town's purchasing office confirmed Tuesday that the Maryland-based company was the top scorer in a request for proposals process that was set into motion last year. The Board of Education voted 5-2 on May 22nd to enter into negotiations with an unidentified food service producer, but the next day it was conceded that it was Sodexo.
Yep.
And so there we go. And since then, we've learned a little bit more about what's going on. The bid, the RFP, the request for proposal that the Board of Education issued to vendors across, the vendors wanted bids based on a guaranteed surplus, a guaranteed profit. Otherwise, don't bid. That was a box that was checked. And so the winning envelope, Sodexo, guaranteed $63,000 and change, $63,000 in profit, and this is the without breakfast option, because there's options, So the Board of Ed decided to go with that. How is the food service program doing based on your reporting anyway, through the end of this school year?
Right. So a little background here. I know you've covered it several times on your show, and the Record Journal has written plenty of stories about it. But so last year, the Board of Education first started exploring outsourcing food services after years of financial losses in the cafeteria account. I guess the director of food services told me that around this time last year they were showing about a $100,000 deficit, which I think is even better than what the years before that were. And he told me that by the end of this month, so today I guess, they're expected to show a $30,000 profit, and that doesn't include I think it's a $38,000 subsidy that the Board of Education put into that account I think last year.
So are we comparing, I want to try to bottom line this, are we comparing an anticipated $30,000 surplus this year with Board of Ed employees to a $63,000 surplus if it's outsourced next year? Are those the relevant numbers? As far as we can tell?
The 30,000's based on the end of this month, and
Right.
I think there's still 2 more weeks left in the school year, so to make it apples to apples.
That could grow, that could...
Right.
or shrink, I suppose, too.
Yeah, it could go up or down, so
Yeah.
we'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you wanted to put it that way, that's...
Yeah, I heard, but I didn't find it. It may be in a cafeteria report or something that isn't yet available, but I heard at the end of this school year, the food service program would end up with a $40,000 surplus. So,
Yeah.
The immediate comparison is maybe next year we'd run a $40,000 surplus too. If we get Sodexo in, it's guaranteed to be $63,000. So, the question is it worth it to outsource for $23,000? Everyone can make up their own.
Out of a $100 million budget.
Yeah.
Board of Education budget.
Right.
So just for context.
Right, exactly. Good point. So folks can make up their mind about that. What it would require if it's outsourced is dismantling some of the administrative functions that the Board of Ed now has to run the cafeteria service. As far as the employees go, the latest information that I have is that all the current cafeteria employees, food service employees, if they apply to Sodexo, if they pass a background check, will be offered jobs at the same rate or substantially the same rate of pay they now have. That is based upon a submission to the town's purchasing department by Sodexo. Your thoughts on that?
Thoughts? It's interesting because this whole time, dating back to last year when me and my predecessors were reporting on this, it wasn't clear whether, they would all lose their jobs, all keep their jobs at the same wage, different benefits. And that was a big part of the story because that's, 50 plus jobs, that's a hit to the local economy if those just go away. So it's interesting to me that you found that language in the, was it the bid?
It was a submission, yeah. It was the bid by Sodexo.
Okay.
That was just made public about a week ago, a little less than a week ago.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know, because I know Sodexo contracts with several other districts in Connecticut, what's happened when, you know, they've turned over operations to Sodexo with the employees in those districts. You know, is this something Sodexo tries to do, you know, in every case, or is it something that was negotiated by Wallingford? That's something I'd want to be curious to know.
And I would look forward to reading about that in the Record Journal.
Yeah. There you go.
There we go. So we'll see. The role of the union is sort of interesting in view of the fact that I guess it's been recently revealed that employees, according to Sodexo, are going to hold on to their jobs, whether the union is now obsolete, whether the union is now a paper tiger. Maybe the employees don't want to make an issue out of the outsourcing. Usually, outsourcing of a public function like this raises red flags about possible labor law violations. You just can't outsource.
What do you mean by that? Give me an example.
Like cafeteria workers, under labor law, outsourcing has to be negotiated.
Mm-hmm.
If they're staying in the food service business,
mm-hmm.
if it's a continuation pretty much of the same function, and you have public employees that are unionized, and now you willy-nilly outsource, basically to break the union and to you know, didn't really have to be breaking the union, but you just willy-nilly outsource it to save money. It has the potential.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I'm not saying it's prima facie. I'm not getting that deep into labor law, but labor law practitioners know that has the potential to be a labor law violation, and the first rule instinctually would be it must be negotiated with the union, not only the outsourcing, but or the effects of the outsourcing have to be negotiated or should be negotiated under many circumstances. The union has been saying we're resisting this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, up till now they've been saying it. So maybe they're negotiating as we talk. We just don't know about it. So we have to wait and see. So then maybe that's the end of our tale, unless something else breaks in the Record Journal. Maybe that's, you know, that's...
Yeah, full disclosure, I've been out of town the last couple of days.
Oh, that wasn't a comment there. This is too new.
Yeah.
And you never know, tomorrow the union rep may say, we have a great deal with Sodexo, we're all happy.
Yeah.
You know, or they may come out and say, we're furious because we're not getting the same fringe benefits and our pensions are kind of interfered with.
Right.
You know, it's still a developing story. I just wish the Board of Ed would be more forthcoming about it.
The one thing you said to me off camera
Yeah.
that I thought was interesting that I don't know if you mentioned was this is a one-year contract?
Yeah, good point. It's a one-year contract. My understanding is that state government and federal government require one-year contracts, so it's going to have to be put out to bid again.
Okay.
And that $63,000 guaranteed surplus may not survive in a successor contract.
Mm-hmm.
It may go down to $0 or $1 or something like that. And then let's say it goes out to bid for the third year. Sodexo may refuse to bid on a guaranteed surplus contract. They may say, no, you know, it's going to be a deficit. We just don't know. But a short-term contract has its own risks. You don't have that stability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'd like to lock in a substantial surplus every year, but that's not the case. One-year deal.
Right. I mean, that's interesting because, you know, just playing out hypotheticals,
Sure.
if that first year doesn't go, you know, the way you know, both sides imagined it, do they convert back to an in-house operation? How does that work?
The way it works is the Board of Ed would meet in secret, executive session probably.
Well,
and they would
executive
discuss-
session would be
They would discuss in executive session and
In
weigh the
secret.
pros and cons of outsourcing
Yeah.
or bringing it back in-house.
Mm-hmm.
And if they decided outsourcing wasn't such a good idea at any step along the way, in a timely way, they would just vote to not renew or not put out to bid again the food service contract. A fine point, but maybe it's worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If the Board of Ed is supposed to negotiate with Sodexo first before they put it out to bid, and if they can come to terms through negotiations, it doesn't have to go out to bid, is my understanding.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. That comes from a Board of Ed business office.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
It's just hard to imagine that, something like that could get waived for a bid, just because,
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about, hundreds of thousands of dollars and jobs and stuff.
Your favorite topic to report on is the Public Utilities Commission?
Yes.
We've talked about that.
Guilty.
Guilty. We've talked about that a lot on the show. The Board of Ed has been, the Public Utilities Commission, I got to expunge that.
Yeah.
From my mind. Public Utilities Commission has been calling meetings to talk about legal fees, to talk about spending more legal fees, to talk about maybe getting more authority to spend more legal fees.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they go into executive session and they come out and nothing is done. That happened twice, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Just bring us up to date on.
Yeah, so, as if, people watch your show every week, and, they probably know that...
Only 3 people do, so got to start at the beginning. Yeah, go ahead.
Give or take.
Yeah.
So, this arbitration that's been going on, I don't even know how many years at this point, well before my time, is entering the 9th inning. It seems like maybe even the bottom of the 9th at this point. And so the trial for this arbitration is scheduled for June 19th. The PUC last authorized more money for legal fees, I believe, in February when it voted to approve $520,000 to carry. I believe the Public Utilities Director's words were it was meant to carry it through all steps of the process.
To conclusion.
To conclusion,
was
yeah.
our understanding, yeah, that was my understanding.
Right, and I think someone else characterized it as a worst-case scenario. And then the town council approved it unanimously, I believe, following that, because the council has to approve any legal fees for the PUC. So now it was a little bit surprising to find out that they were looking for more legal fees just because of the way it was characterized in February. They had a regular meeting on, I forget the exact date, but it was a Tuesday earlier this month. They had their regular meeting, and on the agenda for the meeting was discussion and possible action for a budget amendment, which means more legal fees. For, I think, this fiscal year ending June 30th, and then the next fiscal year, because this trial that starts June 19th is probably going to extend past the fiscal year. And then the chairman of the commission announced during the meeting that they wouldn't be at least publicly discussing or voting on that agenda item. I believe that night they discussed it in executive session, and then I believe the day after that meeting, a new agenda came out for a special meeting at Friday, 6 o'clock, which is everyone's favorite time for a meeting.
Did you go Friday, 6 o'clock?
I did.
Who else?
Did I see you there?
Oh, I think you did.
Yeah. And that was a special meeting, a standalone meeting. I believe the agenda had executive session to discuss it, and then it was discussion and action, not possible action. It was action, so that led us to believe that they were going to vote. They come out of executive session after about 45 minutes, and they take no action. I asked the town attorney. He declined to comment, about anything in this, for why they had met and not done anything twice.
They won't talk.
Yeah, which is, and it's pending litigation, and they're getting down to the wire, so I get it, but that was his comment. So the town council originally had on their agenda that they were going to authorize what the PUC voted on, which is what happened last time, and that turned into just them meeting in executive session for, I think it was like 10 minutes to talk about the arbitration.
So your story on May 18, read this in part, it refers back to February of 2017 when the town council put in another $520,000 for legal fees. And you write the $520,000 appropriation that was approved by the town council was based on cost estimates provided by the town's outside legal counsel
Yep.
The estimate was meant to include all steps in the process. Public Utilities Director George Adair said at the time, quote, essentially, this is estimated as a worst case at this point, PUC Chairman Bob Beaumont said of the $520,000.
That was at the February meeting where they
Yep.
approved the 520.
Yep. So then it brings us up to May 9. May 9 was a town council meeting. The town council met in executive session with the PUC. They were discussing legal fees. Oh, they wouldn't have met. They wouldn't have met if everything was smooth and hunky-dory. They wouldn't meet for no reason at all. So they were discussing an increased appropriation for legal fees, but no vote was taken at that point. And that's because the Public Utilities Commission had not themselves voted. And that brings us up to May 16. PUC meets, goes into executive session to discuss legal fees. They come out, no vote. They meet again on May 19. They meet in executive session, they come out, no vote, and it's now it's kicked down the road, and it's somewhat of a mystery, but what do we watch for? And one couple things to watch for is to whether or not they're going to wait for the new fiscal year and put all the bills into the new fiscal year. Watch for a settlement, perhaps, or some other alternative. I think a settlement is less likely than what I once thought, but I still think it is better than 50-50 odds for a settlement, because I think that's the only way that Wallingford can squeeze a claim of victory out of this arbitration, is by way of a settlement. Your thoughts, and then we'll move on.
The only thing I wanted to add, I've written this several times,
Yeah.
but I think town officials said at the time when the 520 was approved that if it was spent in full, which, considering they're asking for more money now, I think it's safe to assume it was spent in full or is going to be spent in full, that it would bring the total costs of the arbitration up to $2.1 million.
2.1 million,
Yes.
exactly. The trial is set for the week of June 19. Typically, the trial involves a lot of preparation. I think you reported on that because when you asked the town attorney.
Yes.
That
Jan Small, yeah.
Yeah, Janice Small, the Corporation Counsel. And so if it's not going to settle, legal fees are piling up as we talk. And then after the trial is over, typically there are expansive briefs filed, long briefs, that rehash the testimony, refer to transcripts, cite law. It's a big deal and very expensive to file a post-trial brief. Kajing, a lot of legal fees involved in that, which would be in the new fiscal year. So we got to watch for that too. Now, during the budget session with the town, getting away from the PUC, the issue of police officer staffing came up.
Yep.
What was the issue?
So the
It
issue
should come up again, you know, it
Right.
could keep coming up, actually. So
Yeah.
I wanted to spend a little time on this.
As I tried to relay in the story, I mean, this is an issue, and I think I quoted Tom Laffin, Vice Chairman, Town Council, saying that, you know, this is something that's come up, and there's always been this back and forth over whether to add police staffing, you know, for the town. I believe Wallingford is pretty much well below the state average for officers per capita. So that's per population. I think, I'm trying to remember my conversation with the police chief. I don't think that they've added new staffing.
Many years.
Many years. Money was added, or money was taken away, I think, in 2007 fiscal year, as the town was kind of dealing with the stock market crash and the effects of that. So they went down from funding for 75 police officers down to 71. They didn't have to fire anyone when they went down for it because those were vacant positions, but they haven't added any funding for staffing since. So they've been at 71 for, you know, years and almost decades now, and crime's gotten more complicated, the police chief says. I'm not sure what the population has changed at all, but so it's something that, you know, the police chief is saying, you know, we're okay. You know, the town consistently, you know, scores well in public safety studies compared to other surrounding towns, Hamden, Meriden.
So we don't have a crime problem. No one is saying there's a crime
No,
problem.
no one's, police chief isn't saying we're at risk, but more officers could help, obviously. I think any town department could say the more bodies, the better, to deal with some of the problems. And, there's been a problem with the increase in vehicle burglaries in Wallingford and other surrounding towns. And ever since Chief Wright took over, they've been doing more community outreach efforts, which takes time, takes resources, takes people. He's saying that, we could use more, but we're okay. And so it kind of, he originally asked, and I've covered this in several stories, but he originally asked for 2 more positions, or he didn't originally ask, he
thought about it,
planned to ask, but then Governor Malloy's budget came out, Wallingford got cut a significant amount, so he didn't end up asking the mayor, and then I guess so he didn't get the funding. The mayor never had to say no because he never asked. So a couple of town councilors brought it up at a budget workshop before the budget passed earlier
let
this
me read
month.
what you wrote about that.
Yep.
And what was somewhat remarkable to me, normally you think if there's going to be changes to the mayor's budget, it comes from Democrats. It comes from the loyal opposition, not from mainstream Republicans that ask to have the mayor's budget changed.
It's interesting. I think public safety is just one of those issues that kind of transcends,
So this was Republican Councilor Chris Shortell, who I think took the lead in this debate in one of the budget workshops. And you wrote, Republican Councilor Chris Shortell presented a plan that would raise the mill rate by 0.05 to pay for the positions, as 2 police officer positions. The average homeowner would have paid an additional $8.
That's based on the average assessed house in town.
Yeah. In pitching his proposal, Shortell said, from the drug epidemic to the increase in car thefts, the challenges we face as a community are not going away, nor are they getting easier. You can just read the paper or look at social media to realize that. Yeah, we are talking about our police department, which we have been told for years is understaffed. He added, this is not a problem that will just take care of itself, and it is not sustainable. I just can't sit here as a counselor and do nothing. So the issue was debated, and the no addition to police staff forces won, outvoted the add a couple of cops position lost. But
and the argument there was that since the chief didn't explicitly request the funding,
he wasn't squealing. Yeah, he wasn't sounding the alarm.
Right. So why add money for something that he didn't explicitly ask for? That was the argument.
And if he ever does begin to squeal, I think there's 9 councils there to back him up, but he's got to squeal.
Yeah.
He's really got to say this is something we can't do without. It's a public safety issue. Finally, charter revision. We got 4 minutes.
Okay.
For charter revision. So there was a story that you wrote about the chairman of the Inland Wetlands Commission coming to a public hearing just this month and saying, the chairman of the Inland Wetlands Commission, Jim Vitale, arguing that his commission in the past has had supervision and control of the environmental planner, and this upstart Charter Revision Commission wants to take that authority away from him, him primarily because he's the chairman, but take it away from the Inland Wetlands Commission and give it to the mayor so that the mayor would have supervisory control over the environmental planner, which currently works in the basement of Town Hall in the same office as the town planner.
The dungeon.
What's that?
The dungeon.
The dungeon.
Yeah.
So he made his pitch. Jim Vitale said the current system works well, and it would be a mistake to change it to anything else. It's always been in the hands of the Wetlands Commission, Vitale said. I'm disappointed that the Charter Revision Commission didn't come and ask the Wetlands Commission about the change. Let's add some details.
Yeah, so that was... I quoted him from a public hearing where he spoke. I filed the story that night, so I didn't have time to follow up and get him to expand on his argument, but that was pretty much the extent of it. Was it works well, and if it's not broke, why fix it now?
I think I remember from talking with some of the Charter Revision Commission members that their argument was, I think the environmental planner is the only town hall position that reports to a voluntary committee, being the Wetlands Commission, and they want to create consistency across the board because the town planner, for example, reports to the mayor, not to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So there's a consistency argument there. And so, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where we're at.
Right, so we have a full-time town staffer reporting to basically an amateur, Jim Vitale. It's not necessarily Jim Vitale, but it could be anyone sitting in his seat. An argument could be made that a volunteer on a commission doesn't have the skills, the time, the interest in supervising office personnel, working out personnel issues. For the rest of the town government, it's handled by professionals, the mayor, the personnel department, things like that. So why transfer it? Why keep it with an amateur when you can turn it over to professionals? Another issue is the Conservation Commission relies upon the environmental planner for help also, and the Conservation Commission is competing with the Inland Wetlands Commission for the services of the environmental planner. The Conservation Commission wrote a letter to the Charter Revision Commission, and the Conservation Commission, as a body, speaking through the chair lady Mary Heffernan, said, we want the mayor to assume supervisory control over the environmental planner. We want that. Jim Vitale was only speaking for himself. He didn't have a vote of the Inland Wetlands Commission. He didn't have a letter on behalf of all the commissioners on the Wetlands Commission. So as far as we know, it's only two people. What to watch for is how Jason Zandri, Democratic Town Councilor, is going to respond to this. Jim Vitale is a big Democratic donor. He came to a Democratic Town Committee to appeal to the Democrats to help him stop this change over to the mayor now supervising the staff, and how Jason is going to deal with that is something to watch.
And Vinny Testa.
And Vinny Testa.
Yep.
In addition, the appeal by Jim Vitale comes a little late. The Charter Revision Commission minutes of July 21, 2016 indicate that this was discussed on March 15, 2017. There was a public hearing. It didn't come up. You did a column in March detailing all these changes. That was one of them. And again, we didn't hear anyone complaining. March 12, you did a column saying this change was imminent. But Jim Vitale was not there at the microphone protesting. Final thoughts, and we got to sign off because we're out of time. What's the next big story, the next big scoop? There's too many to count, right?
Subscribe to the Record Journal to find out, Mike.
Subscribe to the Record Journal.
One thing I just wanted to throw out there is with the charter revision process.
Sure.
I believe the council is holding a meeting on June 6th, and they're going to, I guess, submit their feedback and suggested changes to the draft of changes that the Charter Revision Commission submitted to them. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for that next week. Thanks for tuning into the Citizen Mike Show. We appreciate it, and thanks, Matt, for coming on and pitch hitting for Ralph Tomaselli. We produce the shows on Wednesdays. You got to see it Thursday at 9 o'clock on WPAA, or Friday at 9 o'clock on WPAA. Go to WPAA.tv. Check out the website. You'll find the Citizen Mike Show. Or after that, it's probably online. You can check it out on YouTube. Citizen Mike Wallingford. It's on a YouTube channel. But that's all we got for tonight. Hey, if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. Good night, everybody.